Greetings, listener. I am Mortis Oratoris. Today I have a treat for you. A creepypasta from the ancient times of 2013. This was a creepypasta written by yours truly, and I have discovered it in the bowels of my computer. So I have decided to put on a production for you. Please sit back, relax, but don't get comfortable, because today I'm reading The Toilet Man. I'm going to iterate for you this past tribulation of mine. This is the story of the Toilet Man. When I was little, and probably you too, we all wondered and feared about the mystery man in the toilet room at the Stockpot Inn on The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. A couple of years ago, I was in the midst of a Skyrim age when it dominated my gamescape. While I thoroughly enjoyed Skyrim, I also fancied older games. Me and my brother Maxwell were graced with a working Nintendo 64, and have played Majora's Mask, along with other games like Ocarina of Time and other classics throughout our childhood. Eventually, my brother went off to college, leaving me as a sophomore in high school. My brother eventually was dragged into games like Call of Duty, and I like getting cussed out by foul-mouthed 7-year-olds as much as the next guy. So I spent many months by myself playing Mass Effect. But what else are you going to do? Without my brother around, my games seemed like they were missing something I couldn't quite name. After a couple of weeks trying to escape this game purgatory, I decided to go back to the basics, old school, the classics. I loathed the idea of starting a new game, so I played my old character, Grasshopper. I made the name to outsmart Romani on the ranch. The game played pretty much the same. I would fight bosses, do miscellaneous quests. I found myself activating the fourth day glitch to stop time, and the fierce deity glitch. I eventually grew bored and ended up spending time in the waterworks place, staring at the giant steel door, realizing it resembled a vault door from Fallout 3 in a way. I was ashamed. I had grown bored of Majora's Mask, and it felt blasphemous and wrong. Eventually, I could play it no more. I fell back into the midst of the game purgatory. I fooled around with a game, then another game, never feeling immersed in them. Luckily, not long after, the semester ended, and Maxwell returned for a while. He returned and made himself comfortable. We reminisced and played the games, and we seemed to regain their vigor. But during his visit, Maxwell had a haunted expression alluding to some kind of fear. I really noticed this when we were playing Majora's Mask. He suddenly became tense and uneasy. It showed the most when I tried to enter the Stockpot Inn. "No!" he would exclaim. "Don't go in there! It's in there!" His sudden phobia of the inn piqued my interest. I tried to find out why. The more I asked, the more irritated and afraid he became. He only assured me that the inn was a bad place. After threatening to go inside, because I didn't believe him, his face became red, and he stood up and stormed out of my room in a rush. When I was alone, I went in, still believing him to be melodramatic. The inn was, as it always was. Andrew stood at the counter. All the rooms were as they should be. Nothing out of the ordinary. My brother eventually apologized, and I didn't chastise him over the episode, but curiosity pained me. Why was he so afraid? What happened to him? Eventually, my brother had to return to school, and it was just me again. I was lethargic in my thoughts. To make matters even worse, it was the weekend, and my parents were out for a romantic dinner. Basically, the night was mine. I was watching SpongeBob when I noticed something. It was an older, more battered Majora's Mask cartridge. I wondered how this came into my possession, because I had only one copy. The cartridge looked damaged, like it had been opened, but somehow returned to a somewhat original shape. Well, it was probably broken and the person repaired it, was my reasoning. But still the question of whose it was still remained. I only owned a gold cartridge, and I never bought doubles. But maybe I did and just never noticed. It rained heavily outside. My window and clasp of thunder could be heard from outside, and the occasional car drove by, splashing water alongside the sidewalk. I wanted to play this Majora's Mask, even though I knew it was the exact same game, but I still wanted to, an innate sense that told me I should play it. After inspecting it to make sure it would fit into my Nintendo 64, I put the game in and turned it on. The machine activated, and my TV changed to the game screen, but it was black for almost 5 minutes. I listened to the machine become loud, very quiet, then loud again. Then it would hum some more. Then it would become very quiet. I sat there for the longest time. I was tempted to turn my TV back to SpongeBob. But after a few minutes of this waiting, while the storm battered my window with countless taps, I decided to go get a Mr. Pibb. My hallway was black when I exited my room. I eventually found the light switch and turned it on. I made my way to the kitchen and entered. Lightning struck outside in the distance, illuminating my kitchen. The tree in my backyard shone in my window as a sinister silhouette outside through the curtains. A little shaken, but nothing too bad. I opened my fridge and opened the crisper. I grabbed a drink nonchalantly, closed the door, and proceeded back to my room with just a little bit more gusto. I sat down on my futon and stared at my Nintendo 64. It was silent, except for the red light on it. I had no indicator of it being on. I decided to take the game before it did any permanent damage to my console. I reached over to my console, and right as I touched the light off switch, the screen flickered and displayed the title. The screen also made a loud rumble, as it usually does, which caught me off guard and startled me. Returning to normal, I sat back down on my futon and picked up the controller and pressed start. It took me to the character select screen. There was only one character, and the other one was empty. The character's name was Link 1. I activated him, saw he had everything, 20 hearts, all the mask, and all the other collectibles as well. This character was obviously invested in. Upon activating the character, the screen went black for a while. Then a very small font would appear with unrecognizable characters, and more would appear. Before I had time to really look at the text, the game loaded. It showed Clocktown, a small town in the game. I moved Link around the game and proceeded as normal. I was playing around the town when suddenly I remembered Maxwell's sudden fear of the Stockpot Inn. I left West Clocktown and went to the inn on the east side of town. When I arrived, I went inside. The likelihood of figuring out my brother's fear was little, but for some reason, I believed I could. Maybe this game was from his college? The Stockpot Inn looked normal. Green walls, normal Andrew at the desk. I checked, and all the rooms were normal, and all the people were there. It was already 2 in the evening, game time. The mailman came in, like he always does. I didn't find anything wrong. Why was Max so scared of this place? I couldn't find anything. I talked to Andrew after the mailman left so I could get the room there. I meandered about the inn, looking everywhere. I checked the room with the music box, the room with Granny, and the kitchen. I was pondering whether or not to turn off the game. and look at funny videos on YouTube. When the first day ended and the night began. When the night began, the clock disappeared after the scene transition, and a dialogue box, like when Link is being spoken to, appeared. It said, "You better leave. The toilet man doesn't like strange people in his house." The game never said anything like that, and it sounded like it was directed towards me, and not so much Link. I was disturbed, to say the least. I paused the game, only to see another box telling me, "There is no time to pause. Leave. Now!" "He's getting angry." Strangely again, I felt like it was directed at me, and not Link. In a rush, I ran to the door. I pressed A in a hurry, but a final box appeared. "Now you've done it. He's really mad now." I wanted to turn off the game, but then again, I wanted to see this toilet man. I was very frightened. I was alone at my house during a thunderstorm. The only thing I had to tell myself to go on was the fact that it was just a game, and that it wasn't real. But while I was debating whether or not to continue, the screen faded to black. I sat there, motionless. The screen was black, and I faintly heard the music to the Great Bay Temple, which was strange because I was nowhere near the ocean. But now, normality was an alien concept. The game started Link at the end of the hallway on the second floor. Link had no sword or shield. Whenever I tried to pause, it would simply say, "You won't need any tools right now." The hotel was different. The lighting was severely dimmed, and everything had a reddish tint to it. When I began to move, the music slowed. I was so in shock how this game was changed. Who did it? Why? Was this a sick joke? Possibly a sick game hack? But was this what had Max so afraid? Whatever was here, be it this toilet man or whoever was here, I had to find it. I pressed the controller stick up to make Link move. His gait was slow, almost lagging. The walls were dark, making corners jet black. The light that had shone in on the second floor was gone, and the windows were gone. I went to the one room that had the bunk beds in them. As I entered, the text box said, "You don't need to go in there. They're all dead." I thought of the music box man, and the twins, who stayed there at night. What did the game mean by being dead? It made no sense. But obviously, the game was not going to let me into the room, so I proceeded down to the knife chambers, the room Andrew gives you if you talk to her. When I was halfway there, another box appeared. "Now you've made him mad. If you can survive the night, you can leave, but no one survives. Try not to be devoured by his minions. Now find the toilet man to begin." I ran Link down the hall, which became very elongated. As Link ran, tiny little Poes started to attack me. They managed to get into the knife room and avoid a grim demise. I sighed with relief once I escaped. The room looked extremely dark, and there was a large chest in the middle of the room that replaces the table and chairs. I walked up to the chest. Link opened it, and, as he usually would with the little song, Link held up his hands and I obtained the gilded sword. I pressed A to continue, and Link raised his arms again, and I obtained the mirror shield. I felt better having a weapon. Then I was greeted with another text box. "You are now equipped. Beware. The toilet man is strong, and he is angered with your intrusion." Once the box left, a new track began to play. The temple track stuttered out of existence, and then I recognized the song, as the song Sharp plays at Icana Canyon, Sharp's Curse. The low piano unsettled me. Lightning clashed outside, and I knew evil was afoot. I had to find the toilet man, and the next few minutes it was going to be on. I left. There were no Poes outside. I continued my search for this toilet man. I ran down the hallway and entered the employees' room, where Andrew sleeps. I opened the doors and found them. The game had Andrew and Cafe lying in their respective beds, but they were lying horizontally. I suppose this was the game's rendition for being dead. It touched me on a number of levels. I felt angry that this toilet man bastard had corrupted a game that I held so close to my heart. As I looked at the bodies, I walked into the middle of the room. A box appeared. In red font it said, "Behold, Link 1, you were about to witness my power." When the box disappeared, Andrew and Cafe's bodies began to levitate off their beds, and behind me appeared a Gomez. I immediately blocked its sight, but I was startled because it just spawned behind me out of nowhere, and the bodies began to shoot orbs of light at me. The Gomez were slow and sluggish, having trouble traversing the hotel room. With the impaired Gomez, I still couldn't fight. I had to flee. I ran for the door, and like a lot of times, Link opened it. I moved around as the Gomez enclosed me, unleashing a storm of keys from its body. After moving Link around the door, he opened it, just sustaining minimal damage from the keys. After that, the music stopped abruptly. Then a dialogue box appeared. "You met the Gomez, haven't you? Think, where would you find the toilet man?" The box stayed open, giving me time to think. I wondered, then I realized, the bathroom! I felt stupid for not realizing this sooner, but as a child, the bathroom there always scared me. I seldom visited it. Because of the hand. The hand! Then it hit me. The toilet man is the man in the toilet. It made so much sense now. But then I wondered, what would the game do with this man? It spawned a Gomez, darkened the whole hotel, turned Andrew and Cafe into floating corpses. What would this toilet man be like? I pressed A and heard the Gomez thrashing in the room behind me. I did not re-enter. Instead, I walked down the stairs. The bottom floor was awful. The walls were littered with red pixels, simulating blood, and the floors were stained, and when Link would walk, his steps had the splash effect, like when he runs in a puddle, which told me that this was the game's rendition of deep buckets of blood. I tread carefully. I could not open the front door. I walked around the hallway to find the toilet man. As I turned the corner near Granny's room, I found him. He was tall enough to just barely hit the ceiling. He had gray, veiny skin. He had 2 long arms, the arms that came out of the toilet. His body was small, gaunt. He had a pot belly, and his ribcage was visible under his skin. His head was the most disturbing part. It looked like a gross combination of a large mask, a Deku Scrub's face, and possibly a Style Child's. His mouth open and shut to breathe. His teeth were large, and his gum line was receding, revealing the bloody roots of his teeth. They were also disarranged and crooked. One yellow eye, larger than the other. It was grotesque. Then he spoke to me. "I am what you fear at night. I am the thing that makes your spine shiver. I am the thing that goes bump in the night. Now here you are, in my realm. What say you? Why are you here?" I was given a choice of answers. 1. I sought you out. 2. I'm not here by choice. 3. I don't fear you. My obvious choice was clear. I pressed 2, and he replied, You put the game in. You should know better than to play strange games. Then the same replies come up again, except 2 was missing. I pressed 1. That is dangerous, Link 1. Most men go out of their way to avoid me, but in a sense, you have sought me out to begin the challenge. All that was left was 3. I reluctantly pressed it. Ah, but you should. Humans enjoy fear. If you were smart, you would have turned this off a long time ago. Now, here I am. It chilled me when the game spoke to me. It made him seem omniscient and more than a simple game villain. The conversation ended. He jumped at me. He was lightning fast. His first hit took 7 hearts from me, leaving my health beeping. Before he could attack again, an ear-shattering clasp of thunder rolled and crackled, disabling my power. I screamed loudly, almost slowed myself. Everything was black, except for the light flashing outside. The remote was sweaty from my hands. My hands were pale from grasping it too hard. I dropped it, and they shook. I put my legs on the futon with me, and I waited for the lights to come back on. When they didn't, I began to worry. Then I heard a bang. It was the front door. I dared not open it. I just couldn't. I waited and waited. Eventually, it stopped. Then I heard a voice. Bobby! Hey Bobby, you alright? Mom and Dad called me to check on you. Hello? I was so paranoid. I couldn't open the door. I couldn't. I wouldn't. But I didn't want to, but I had to. Nor Max. After an hour, the noises stopped, and I presumed he left. Soon after, power came back on. I sighed with relief, but I was still alone. I spent the night with every light in the house on, and every TV on. Around 3 in the morning, my body gave way to fatigue. I was mentally and physically exhausted. I collapsed on the couch in the living room. I awoke to the sound of my front door rattling. I jumped, ready for the worst. After a night plagued with nightmares, my parents walked in, and I exclaimed my thankfulness that they were home. They were glad to see me, but they didn't notice my haggard state. I told them I was sorry for not answering Max's knocking. My parents looked confused, and my mom said, "We never called Max to check on you."